Well, the bad news is October's over, so no more spooky season. The good news is it's now November, so I will be participating for the first time ever in No Shave November, which means with every passing video, I'm going to get slightly worse looking. Hey, what's up? My name is John Bonjour. I am an artist and a film enthusiast, and I am here to talk to you about Loki Season 2, Episode 5. Beefed it. Beefed that one. We're going to move on. I'm also going to talk a little bit about episode 4, just because I didn't do a video because I was traveling. Get that out of the way. Episode 4, really solid, very good. Kind of more of what we were expecting, right? You get a little more timely, a little more Loki trying to figure out how to solve the TVA. I like that they kind of solved the who pruned Loki situation. I wasn't hugely surprised by that. But anyway, the way they left off that episode, killing timely in the spaghetti fashion that we've become so gloriously accustomed to in Marvel. I love the spaghetti effect. I know that it's like in pretty much everything now. I will never get tired of spaghettification. I just won't. I never will. Anyway, killing timely and then sort of exploding the TVA, all of these things were not what I was prepared for. So needless to say, I was very excited for episode 5. Let's dig in. Guys, this show is so good, it's not even funny, okay? Like, I understand that not everything in Marvel is for everybody, and I understand why people might not like, say, a Thor Love and Thunder as much as I enjoy it. I get that. I totally do. If there is anyone who actively dislikes this season of Loki, I would love to hear their justification for why that is. This might be one of, if not the greatest things Marvel has ever produced, okay? It is a perfect amalgamation of the kind of Marvel feeling that we've come to know and love, and then this new kind of weird sci-fi Doctor Who-y twist in all of that, but it takes itself completely seriously. This show is so good, and this episode is probably my favorite of the show so far. I love Loki learning how to time slip intentionally. I think that's a really interesting thing, and I like that it doesn't seem like he's just sort of adding on a new power. That seems like a thing that's really only applicable to this story, and then who knows, maybe later on he'll be able to do it here and there, but I feel like it is more or less specifically a Loki for this situation kind of thing, which I think is really cool. It's an interesting mechanic and it makes a lot of sense for this kind of surrounding story, but it doesn't feel like it's hugely changing the ramifications of where Loki stands in the power scale, which I think is important. We don't not everybody has to become the most powerful character in the MCU. I promise. We really don't have to do that every time. It's nice to have characters that are powerful, but not, all powerful. But the story of this episode and the way that it's framed, around kind of just dodging the spaghettification of the universes, there's something so interesting about that. And I love that they're not taking a ton of time on it. I guess you could do a season of Loki jumping from universe to universe, but at some point it would just kind of feel Monster of the Week. And I don't know that that's what this show is really for. If you were going to do a Man-Thing show, that's something you could do, Monster of the Week, new bad guy, new character, new story, every time, every episode. Loki, at least the way they've set it up, really isn't that. So I'm glad that we get introduced to this concept of Loki kind of bouncing around universes, trying to avoid, the destruction of everything. Again, for him, by the way, which, as a side note, I think is really interesting. They treat this kind of unraveling of universes sort of similarly. I think it's very intentionally kind of similar to the way they treated the, blip. But I like that this has a different weight to it. I'm not going to say more weight because there's an inherent, the Avengers lost in the blip, and that's what makes that so powerful. There's just something uncontrollable about this. The way that it just, you don't know. A guy's just pouring coffee and then his mug is gone and then all of a sudden he's going away. I find that so intrinsically interesting and kind of upsetting to watch. Powerful stuff. I love the way we get to see each character's where they got pulled from. At least I'm going to go on ahead and assume that that's what we're talking about, because hypothetically there are an infinite number of Mobiuses, right? So maybe this isn't the Mobius that got pulled into the TVA to become the Mobius we know now. That seems like a weird call, so I'm just going to assume that we're learning backstory on each of their individual lives. If that's not true, I hope they make that super clear. But until that point, I'm just going to assume that's what it is. So in that, I like that we're getting to learn what other people were doing and what was going on. I do think it's just a super random thought. I think it's interesting that they had one of them from 2012. I do not remember who it was. But anyway, I think it's interesting that they had one of them from a branched 2012. Really thought that maybe the whole New York thing was going to come into play there. If not, why 2012? That's very specific. But hey, it's an interesting year in the Marvel Universe. I guess that we're just going with that. But having Loki go through all these universes, round the team up back together again, just so that he and OB, who, adorable, by the way. I love the way that they chose to have OB's kind of normal variant. I don't know what we're calling that. Human, normal. His non-TVA side. I love that he's like a science fiction writer. He has some of the best lines in this. The whole, it was a fiction problem. Really great line, surprisingly good line, in a very well-written show. But I think the thing that stands out about this episode more than anything else in the show is just how calmly tense it is. I love, my favorite scene in this episode and maybe this season is Sylvie going to the record store and talking to the guy, and then she sits down, listens to her music, and then that shot, as you start to see everything unravel, but the shot of overhead kind of looking down at the record as it spins, you're spinning with the record, and everything around it is just starting to unravel. The way that they played with that and shot that is a memorable moment. I will not stop thinking about that for quite a long time. I'm not sure if that's what happens in an incursion or if this is a completely different thing, but if they choose to go that route, it's really freaky watching it just kind of descend into nothing, just a void of what used to be a universe. That is haunting shit. But I think none of that really would have worked if we hadn't spent time with all of these characters, with Loki, bouncing around, having different conversations. For a second to last episode, it's kind of slow, or at least it feels slower. I think that was the perfect move. This is the break right before, the calm before the storm that we really needed, because this whole show has just been go, 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 go. I think we needed a second to remind ourselves, okay, these are the stakes, and this is what's really happening. And yeah, universes and billions of people and all that, but also people, these people. In Ant-Man, you see Kang and he's destroying universes, and you're like, oh, that's marginally sad, but you never see literally anyone in clear focus, ever, outside of Kang. So it's no, he's killing some blobs, that. There's no emotion to that. When Sylvie's universe got unraveled, that was really sad. It was genuinely sad to see a guy that, granted, we hadn't had a lot of screen time with him, the guy who owned the record shop, but we had enough that I cared about him, and we got little insights into his personality and the way that he lived his life. That was plenty for me to feel genuinely sad when he got unraveled, and Loki's, and Mobius's kids and all that. You can tell that he's just a dad who cares, which is sad in a completely separate side of things. Because that guy has kids, and they just lost a dad at some point, maybe after they lost a mom. Incredibly sad. I can't even, I just I'm choosing not to think about that. I don't even know what to say outside of just this show kicks so much ass. It's so good, and I cannot wait to see where they go with this finale. Could not be happier with it. I think it strikes the perfect tone. The comedy is great, but it's not over the top. The references to other things are interesting and fun, but it's, again, not just okay, we put a Marvel thing in from the other thing. Are you happy with this? Do you love this? That's never what we loved Marvel for. And that's not what we love Marvel for now. Sure, it's great to see John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, but there's no emotional connection to John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. There's emotional connection to every one of these characters. It's if OB dies, I'm going to be legitimately sad. Actively sad. I don't think he's going to, but who knows, right? This show could do pretty much anything. I legitimately thought Victor Timely was dead. I thought he was a dead person. He still might end up being that. So it's one of those things, I have no idea. I have no clue where they're going with this. I had no clue really where they were going with this the whole time, aside from just sort of pick up the pieces of the TVA, which really has been the theme of this season, but they're doing it in such an interesting way. I love that they're keeping me on my toes. I love that they're keeping this sci-fi element throughout the whole thing. Even having Loki be in that time loop, even at the beginning of this episode, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to think through it that far, but they did. And that shows to me how committed Benson and Moorhead and the writers and everybody is to making this a legitimately good show. Not just a fun show for popcorn entertainment, but a show that's going to stand up to the test of time. And I think that's what this is. Or they're going to drop the ball so hard in the last episode, as I fear they will every time, because they have a couple of times. But there's something in my heart that feels like they're not going to. This feels like it has a steady hand. This doesn't feel in flux. kind of a strange comparison, the Marvels coming up. I'm very excited about the Marvels. I'll go on record for that. I think it looks fun and cute and like a good time. I'm a little worried though, because it doesn't feel like a movie that they knew what they were making with it. Like I don't get the sense that this is a movie with a purpose outside of just introduce Kamala Khan into what I'm going to call the mainstream MCU audience, which is like the people who just watch the movies and don't watch the shows. But who knows? I have all the hope in the world that it's going to be the best MCU movie that we've ever gotten. I don't think that that's going to be true, but I don't think it's going to be terrible, and I really hope that it's not. But I think the timing of those two things makes it an interesting comparison, because I feel very not worried about what's going to happen in the next episode of Loki. Like, I'm not concerned that I'm just going to be like, oh man, okay, that could have been good. I'm a little worried about that for the Marvels. And I think it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting place to be in this world where like two things are coming out from the same studio in the same weekend. And one of them I am beyond the moon hyped, and the other I'm a little concerned about. Still very excited, just to be clear. The whole hate for, I can't get started. But anyway, back to Loki. Could not be happier with what they've done with the season so far. I cannot wait to see where they go. Thank you for watching this video and checking out my channel. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on Loki, tune in next week for my full season review. And if you want to hear my thoughts on any other movies, comics, TV shows, chairs, just hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell I think you're supposed to hit still. Comment down below what you'd like me to review next, or do none of those things because I am not your dad. Hey, what's up? My name is John Bonjour. Whoa, probably blew the shit out of that mic.